Howdy. Um, I'm primarily recording this for my own benefit. I think it's important to exercise my First Amendment rights while I have the opportunity to do so. I am not someone with any sort of platform. I've got like 300 something subscribers, most of which I would say are probably trolls. Maybe not most of which. That's probably unkind, but you know, I am not someone in a position of power. I am not someone with any connections to any organizations. I don't belong to any clubs. Nothing. I am just someone who sees what's happening in the world and is horrified and feels the need to say something out loud on the record for the whole world to see, because I think it's important to speak truth to power, as it were. I know that sounds fucking ridiculous, and if I had a better avenue to do this, I would. Um, but I don't. So here we are. So, when I initially heard that Charlie Kirk had been shot, um, I'm not gonna lie, I did not initially hear that he had been shot. What I initially heard was that he had died, out of context. I didn't know the details, so the first bit of information that I got was that he was dead, and my brain instant reaction was, "Oh, neat," because this is a man who built his entire career on dehumanizing people like myself and any other marginalized community you could possibly think of. Um, and he will get into some of his quotes, I think, when a little later. But this was a person who was incredibly hateful in his rhetoric. Um, it was, as hateful rhetoric in the United States often is, couched in a veneer of Christianity. Um, I just really don't think that Christ would have been down with the way that most of these people speak about other human beings, most especially like immigrants and shit, but, Um, to be fair, I am not someone who believes that um, you should receive any kind of special treatment upon your death that you didn't receive when you were alive. Um, you know, there there was a dude that I worked with that I thought was a fucking creep. He called 19-year-old employees naughty to their face in front of a large group of people. It was gross. And this dude died, congestive heart failure. He didn't, wasn't assassinated or anything. But upon the discovery of his death, everybody at work was like wah wah about it, as if the dude wasn't a creep. And like people who had, within a week of that day talked shit about this man, suddenly like, oh, what a shame. Really? What a shame? But, I didn't wish the man dead, but I certainly didn't give a shit when he was, because I didn't find him to be of value to my life or anyone else's around us. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, you don't have to like everyone. You just don't. But that doesn't mean that you wish someone dead, and that doesn't mean that it is appropriate to kill them, right? Political violence is this. It's not acceptable. It doesn't fucking work. And the combination of those two things, it's like when I go on fucking rants about spanking your children as punishment, right? Not only is it psychologically harmful, but it doesn't fucking work. And this is the same thing with this kind of fucking political violence. It doesn't accomplish what the people who commit it are ever trying to accomplish. It's always used to accomplish some other shit that's not beneficial to fucking anyone. Y- Yeah. So, and I said this shit fucking months or however long ago with the United Healthcare CEO, right? One man does not a revolution make. And I'm sorry, man, you can't kill people because you don't agree with their ideas. Like, that's just not an acceptable way to conduct yourself in a fucking society. But we live in a country where we have to be afraid to send our children to school because they might die just because schools are a common place to get shot, i.e., where the fuck was Charlie Kirk when he got shot? And there was another school shooting happening, like 500 miles away at the exact same fucking time that no one's fucking talking about. That the person who committed that shooting was very much obviously right wing, as most of the people who have committed acts of domestic terror in this country since, I think the major study that is quoted is from like 91. Like, I'm sorry, man, the Oklahoma City, like, there are so many violent acts of terror, acts of political violence that are committed by the white supremacist, right wing, like, Christian. It's so goddamn laughable to then have JD Vance be like, this is a problem of the left, because of a poll that says that people on the left are more likely to rejoice in the death of someone they disagree with. Here's the thing: people on the left are more likely to be honest, because I promise you that people on the right are just as likely to be fucking shitty about it and just not be shitty in public. You know what I mean? But not even that. I mean, what happened when Pelosi's husband was attacked, right? And you've got Donald Trump tweeting out pictures of underwear and hammers and making jokes about Halloween costumes. It's not as if when there are acts of political violence toward Democrats and toward people on the left that the right doesn't make jokes and doesn't rejoice, right? Um, I think that two things can be true at once. You can be vehemently against political violence because it doesn't fucking work. Like, we can take the morality out of it because, let's be real, if this were a situation where, political violence had some utility, I think that the Republicans would be the first fucking people on board to do it, right? Um, and I think that most often when political violence occurs, the only people who benefit are the state, because they can then use that violence as a reason to crack down on the freedoms of the population. I think that the fact that this kid was not like extreme anything other than brain rotted is, I am of two minds. Half there are two wolves inside me, right? There is the wolf that is the wants to be reasonable wolf, that looks at the profile that we have of Tyler Robinson and says, that kid could have been your brother. To me, right? My little brother, adopted brother, right? So he adopted me. Never mind. He was raised in Utah by a conservative family. He also was a bisexual dude, which apparently Tyler Robinson identifies as bi. Um, my brother didn't figure that out until much later in life. I think that his knocking his girlfriend up relatively young and becoming a father early was the thing that kept him from becoming um, kind of radicalized in any direction. Um, his life definitely did not go the best, as it were. Ending in your early 30s is not usually the ideal um, way to go about it. Um, but he also was someone who was constantly online, totally meme brained. Video games were the most important thing to him, not particularly political, but the avenues where he was political were things that like directly touched his life, which is a very typical white guy way to conduct politics, right? Um, because you, as someone who lives as the default human in a country, you have the option to ignore politics in most cases because it doesn't really affect you whether or not abortion is legal. You weren't going to get to make that decision one way or the other, so it kind of doesn't affect you either way if you're the dude in this situation. If you're a white guy, you're probably not going to get picked up by ICE because you look like you might be an immigrant, so you probably don't really care about that much, unless you know someone, right? So, like, which to be fair, my brother was always someone who was very open minded. He was never like a conservative dude, by any stretch. But he became more vocal about things as it touched him more closely because he learned more about it, right? But this was me talking about him in his, late 20s, early 30s, not me talking about him at 22. I didn't know him at 22. But from what I understand, he was kind of a little shit. So I can imagine that the sort of opening up of one's political ideology from like completely ignoring politics because you may not think that your family is correct because you can see that like they're all kind of hateful fucking weirdos and they don't seem very happy with their lives, so like um but not necessarily like seeking out any kind of politics, and so not really um developing political leanings until shit drops in your lap. um so like, say 5-ish years ago when BLM was, real popular, and there were, riots and et cetera, et cetera. That was around the time that my brother was dating a black woman. And so, like, he became far more conscious of, like, race as a concept because it was in his face way more. Because, like, she would do the emotional labor of having those conversations with him, which is funny because like I would say shit to him too because I am someone who is like studied and stuff. I don't know, man. I want to understand people who are different than me, who think differently than me, who come from different backgrounds. Like, I think that there's a benefit to that. um understanding other people and leading with empathy is definitely the best way to exist, in my opinion. Um, but leading with empathy means that you can empathize with um, all emotions that people have, right? You may not agree, um, but it's understanding where those things come from. And, we don't want to do that in this country, because if someone is angry about something, and that person is angry at you, they just need to shut up. They don't you don't get to be angry. There's no like righteous anger unless you're in the ruling class. um, they literally, at this point, it seems that they're trying to make it illegal to complain about Donald Trump at all, or about the right at all, or to say anything mean, or, it's like, I'm sorry, it's illegal to be mean now? Like, that's where we're at, but only it's illegal to be mean to people on the right, because Megyn Kelly can still talk about trannies like it's nothing, and that's fine. But you know uh, we can't quote Charlie Kirk when talking about Charlie Kirk, because if you talk about the shit that he actually said, it's not very nice. you know um, he was supposed to debate Hassan Piker in just a few days at this point. It was going to be a debate at a college. I think it was supposed to be at Dartmouth, if I'm recalling correctly. I could be wrong about the location, but um, they've debated before, um, and I sincerely believe, cannot prove it, cannot prove it. I have nothing to substantiate this whatsoever, other than a belief in my very soul that a huge part of the reason that Charlie Kirk is no longer alive is because they didn't want him. And I'm not sure who they is, and I think I'm quoting Candace Owens with that one. Um, I have a belief of who they is. We'll get more into that. I think it was the CIA, honestly, truly. I think this was some, MLK style shit where they didn't like the way that his particular form of advocacy was going, even though it seemed to be very much in their favor. And he was, in fact, credited for acquiring the youth vote for Donald Trump by many. Um, Candace Owens spoke a lot about it. And, she, I think, leans toward a belief that this was Mossad. I'm not sure if she said it outright or just hinted at it, or said that other people are saying that it was. To be clear, I do not believe that that is the case. I believe that Bibi is leaning into that particular conspiracy theory because it feeds into the anti-Semitism, both real and imagined, that is happening. Um, based on the actions of Israel, um, because they will call anything that is anti-Israel anti-Semitic, but there are definitely actual anti-Semitic people who will take those very same actions and apply them to the Jewish diaspora rather than just the Israeli government, which I am very much in the government does not represent the people of the country fully in most cases, let alone Does this government of this country represent an entire fucking religion all over the world, where more of them live in the United States than live in fucking Israel anyway? So, like, there are more Jewish people here than there. So, like, yeah, no, I don't buy it, bro. I just don't. You are never going to convince me that Benjamin Netanyahu, in any way, shape, or form, represents Jews. Like, on the whole. I just, nope, nope, nope. It's just not how this fucking works, man. I'm sorry. Like, I you would literally would have to have God come fucking tell me. Right. And then I'd have to actually believe that it was God. So then I'd have to actually, which, I don't know. Maybe it's just with age, but I'm becoming way less atheist pilled as I go. I don't know, man. Brief aside. Christian TikTok apparently thinks that Rapture's coming Tuesday. I fucking hope it is. Just saying. Because either I'm going to get raptured because I'm awesome, or I'm not, and all of the people who have been talking this bullshit will, in fact, be raptured, and all of those of us who don't suck will be left, and it'll be like heaven. So either way, yes, please bring it on. Um, but Charlie Kirk um, had to walk a line of an audience that was not as pro Israel as it had previously been. Because there, are a lot of American evangelical Christian Zionists that absolutely believe that the nation of Israel is the biblical state of Israel, like that this is all, um, and a fair amount of those folks were a part of Charlie Kirk's audience. However, the groypers, the people who said that he was not right enough, um, out in the world, who are openly and outwardly anti-Semitic, who are anti-Israel because of that anti-Semitism, um, were also bleeding into his audience, right? There were, certainly people in his audience who aligned with Candace Owens, who is anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, although, these are people who would deny being anti-Semitic. But when you start talking about Jewish conspiracies as if you believe them, it, you know, uh, it's yeah, it's difficult for me to believe that you are anti-Israel if you are feeding into Bibi's propaganda mill by feeding into these false conspiracy theories. Um, but I fully believe that the United States government was afraid of having Charlie Kirk debate Hassan Piker. Not necessarily because, as is suspected, Charlie Kirk was going to, in the near future, flip his public position on his support for Israel and, be publicly anti-Israel. Some people suspected that he would have been pro-Palestine, and I think that's just laughable when you have a man who literally has said the phrase, stupid Muslims shouldn't have killed Jews then. This is not a person who is going to turn around and be pro-Palestine. He may at some point come out and, or he might have come out and been, more vocally anti-genocide as a way to be more vocally anti-Israel. Um, but his, as Hassan would say, his output consistently was very much pro-Israel, and it was very much pro the party line, and very pro-Trump, and et cetera, et cetera. However, I think that he was someone who had political aspirations of his own, and therefore maintaining his own audience, and his own following was, just as important to him as maintaining his position with this administration, because ultimately, as a 31-year-old dude, he doesn't think that, this is the last administration he's going to get to have an opinion on, thinking that there might be one that he's running, that this is a possibility, and I don't think that those were unreasonable aspirations based on the position that he held in the public eye, right? Um, we will elect idiots. So, like, but I think that having him on a stage with Hassan Piker, who is kind of the face of, not being anti Semitic, being pro Palestine, and being anti Zionist and anti Israel in a way that is very open and honest and transparent and, like, compassionate, and very much a, hey guys, we understand that a lot of you didn't really understand what was going on, so, like, if you come on over to the side of reason now, we will absolutely accept you. I'm not gonna bitch at you about shit you said 6 months ago if you can be reasonable now in recognizing that, genocide is bad, bombing babies is bad, bombing hospitals is bad, and we should stop funding it, because it's our American tax dollars that are going toward these fucking bombs. So, like, mm, um, so I think that the idea of having these two gentlemen, duke it out in the marketplace of ideas, and having Charlie maybe not push back quite as hard as he might have previously. Um, that he may not have done a sufficient job of fighting back in a way that would have been palatable to the current administration, maintaining this tightrope walk of fighting anti-Semitism while also being incredibly anti-Semitic, and everything relying on anti-Semitism uh, being aimed at Israel as, like, the driving force for every fucking political action. It's oh my goodness, it's all very intentional. The infighting is, I think, very intentional. I think a lot of it is, look away from the Epstein situation because, that shit is going to, you know, they really want to kill free speech before the victims come out and start naming names because there doesn't really need to be a list because there are people out there who know. And if we're in a position that if you say anything negative about the administration, you get like arrested or whatever, then they're going to scare these victims into continuing to be silent, right? Like that's the goal in part. Um, which, the grouping trans people in with this shit is, just yet again, we are the scapegoats. It's literal Nazi shit. It is literal Nazi shit. This is literally what the Nazis did. If you do not want to get called Nazis, stop doing Nazi shit. The Nazis burned all the fucking gender research, right? Like the Nazis rounded up the queers and the trannies as well for the camps. Like, what are we doing here? You know, it the point at which the kind of gravity of Charlie Kirk's assassination, really hit me because I'm a parasocial, brain rotted internet lunatic just like everyone else. Was watching Hassan um, watch the video, which I have not watched the video of Charlie Kirk getting shot. I don't need that in my life. Thank you. I'm good. Um, but, like watching him realize that that just as easily could have been him because he was about to share a stage with them. This whole idea that Hassan Piker was calling for violence against Charlie Kirk at any point is so fucking ridiculous because he has put himself side by side with the man on multiple occasions and was planning to do it again in just a couple of days. So the idea that he would want someone to be out there using like oh my god, it's so ridiculous. No, he wanted to debate him. He wanted to see what the fuck Charlie Kirk had to say at this point in the game with the public as they are regarding the issue of Israel and its ongoing genocide against the people of Palestine, and how he was going to debate that. When he was talking about the debate, he said we were going to debate on Israel. And he kind of walked it back a little later and said, that they intended, I'm sure they would have debated about other things or whatever, but like, that was the thing that Hassan certainly was most interested in debating him on, and it's like, I don't know, man. And all of this as well, the Democrats are just, yet again, the most disappointing fucking party in the history of fucking political parties, and I hate this entire fucking political system. All of it. Because it's just the most bullshit fucking ugh. Um, the Democrats have done absolutely nothing to protect any sort of free speech. They've done nothing to protect any sort of marginalized populations, trans people, women, nothing, nothing, nothing. They've pushed back against nothing. In many cases, they have capitulated early. Fucking Jimmy Kimmel got canceled now because Trump said to, and the fucking FCC commissioner is out and out threatening licenses, and it's just like, what we're just fuck the First Amendment. The Second Amendment stands, though. Like, we're not going to go after gun rights, right? The dude died from a gun. The words aren't what killed him, it's the gun that fucking killed him. We understand that, right? And I said this to my son. Like, I think genuinely we are beyond the fucking point of gun control at this point. We have fucking 3D printers now. It's over. Like, it's fucking over. Uh, I don't think that it is reasonable to suggest in a country where there are more guns than people that gun control is a viable option. What we need is universal health care with comprehensive mental health care and healthcare facilities, including mental health care facilities that are not run for profit, so that they are run with the care of patients in mind, so that people are getting good health care. Because if we pay as a people with our tax dollars for good health care for everyone up front, the cost is going to be less than paying for emergency services, paying for emergency response in the form of police, etc., when people go fucking insane and commit acts of violence. The dude on the fucking subway fucking stabbing a random person for no fucking reason, and it was a dude who they knew goddamn well had massive amounts of mental health issues, and they like didn't do anything to actually address the shit. Like, yeah. It's not, granted, yeah, he had acted violently because of these things, and it's like punishing people who act in ways that they cannot control is not the issue here. But, like, you know taking care of people is. Like, I'm sorry, man. There's a whole industry of people who are caregivers to people with a variety of different disorders that cause them basically to need someone to watch them, right? Because they can't be responsible for their own actions. Hi, hello. This is what I do for a fucking living, right? Like, I take care of developmentally disabled adults. I'm a direct support professional is my official title, right? Like, there are DSPs out there, and it's an industry that's easy to get people trained into, and we could have a lot more of us, and we could be taking care of people. You don't have to institutionalize people, you know what I mean? Like, we could just allot the resources that are available to the people who need them. Housing first is the way to address homelessness that has worked the best. But no one wants to do that because it costs money, because there's an upfront cost. But in the long run, it costs less because it reduces medical costs, it reduces emergency services, but when you want to have a homeless population that is visible enough that you know that they exist, so that you fear becoming a part of it, so that you behave at your shitty corporate job so that you don't get fired, right? But invisible enough that you can still have people go out and go to restaurants and shit without having to see the very obviously untreated, mentally ill dude shitting and jerking it in the middle of the street while you're trying to go out with your kid, right? You know, heaven forbid that person actually receives some health care, or that person's life might not have been a complete and total shit show up until that point to lead them there. Because guaranteed, if someone is in that position, there's been a lot of fucking bullshit that could have gone better in the healthcare arena before they got there. Guaranteed. You know, in a lot of cases, these homeless people are fucking vets. My God, we know what we've done to them. Uh, yeah, PTSD is real, folks, and it fucking feeds into like every other mental health disorder and neurodivergency, and oh my God, like, the only thing radical about the left is how different our desires are from those of the right. It is radically different than what they want, because you have people going, why should I have to pay for someone else's health care? Versus the radical left going, everyone should have health care. You should have health care. I should have health care. Your children, my children, the homeless dudes on the street, the fucking millionaires, billionaires, all of us. We should all just be able to go to the fucking facilities. We should prioritize having well-trained medical professionals accessible and available. We should, if we are going to continue to live in a capitalist society, pay the people who work for these government-run institutions well, such that people will want to do these fucking jobs, and they will be done well. You have to pay people well enough to give a shit about their job. You just do. If you do not pay people well enough to care, they won't. You know, this, like, tightrope walk of having people give just enough of a shit about their job to not quit, but not enough to, like, you know, advance, I guess. I don't, oh God. This whole situation is just so fucking frustrating, you know? And it's like, to hear that they're planning, like, some additional classification for trans people when being investigated for thought crimes, because that's what this shit is. Like, yeah, it's just, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. We are absolutely just living in our own version of fucking Nazi Germany, man. This, you know, this is a fascist regime that we are living in. They are getting to the point that we can't speak out against them. We'll see what happens with this, right? Yeah. I don't want political violence from any side. I don't. It's not useful. Point blank. It doesn't fucking help. One guy shooting one guy is not going to fucking change things for the better. And much in the way that I believe that the government is responsible for the Kennedy assassination, and I believe that the government is responsible for assassinating MLK and Malcolm X, I believe that the government is responsible for assassinating Charlie Kirk. And I think that, honestly, there was probably some boardroom somewhere where they considered the other guy in the debate. But the thought of martyring that guy was not one that they wanted to deal with. So they thought martyring their guy would be a better idea. Because, they're still trying to come after all of us. I don't know, man. I don't know what to take seriously and what not to, and what is just blowing smoke and what is really going to be. But like, I'm sorry, man. I will not prematurely capitulate to this shit, and I do not believe that any of us should. And I think that the best way to fight back is for all of us to continue to speak out openly, frankly, and reasonably about all of this shit. I also think that if you want some praxis, especially the men out there, the cis and the heteros especially, or at least those of you that are hetero passing, um, don't do anything you're uncomfortable with. I certainly don't want to force people into doing things they don't want to do, but gender expression is something that has been fluid throughout all of history, right? Pink used to be the boy color, blue used to be the girl color. Look at the 80s, look at how we used to dress, etc., etc. If you are the sort of dude who has ever thought about painting your nails as a nail painting dude, do it. You ever looked at a picture of Kurt Cobain and thought he looked real cute in pigtails? Do it. If it's harder for them to tell who is and isn't, you know, trans, as it were, if we can continue to blur lines, it becomes much more of a they can't take us all kind of a situation. Um, I don't know, man. It's really disappointing to see liberals talk about trans people as if we are a talking point, and talk about how the false belief that there was too much focus on trans rights from like the Harris campaign, that was somehow responsible, and like Anna Kasparian's whole "we've gone too far" with gender ideology, and like, I'm not a fucking talking point, man. I'm a human being. Right. I'm a whole ass human being. I have a life and a family and a job, and like, I have no respect for people who just make me a talking point. And it's one of the reasons that I am so adamantly like anti all forms of bigotry and will bitch and complain and take up the mantle for like pretty much anyone when they're being discriminated against, because bigotry of one is bigotry of all, man. Like if you start dehumanizing one group of people, you start dehumanizing all of them. And if you are going to start prioritizing who should and shouldn't have rights, like, this is bad. It's a real slippery slope, man. Like, you. So exercise your free speech and your freedom of expression while you can, in any ways that you can. Whatever your political beliefs are, fucking say them out loud. Um, you know, Tell people, post about it, talk about it, no matter how left, right, center. I don't give a shit at this point. Um, I, you know, we need to stop with the civility politics. I do not care what language you use. I'm done. I'm done. The whole reason that we started policing language, it was supposed to be something that was like self-policing because you genuinely cared about the feelings of other people. It wasn't supposed to be some shit that's like, you're not supposed to say that, like that. Dude, like, oh my gosh. Like, okay, so for example, and I've mentioned this before. There's a YouTuber, Veritas Joe. I'm a big fan. Um, at some point, they had said that something was jip in one of their videos. And this is a term that I grew up hearing constantly, and it wasn't until I was in college that the second time that I had someone go, "Hey, that's Romani slur, bro. Like, it's gyp, short for gypsy. Gypsies ripping people off. Like, that's where the etymology of that. Like, that's not cool." And I was like, "Oh shit, my bad. Didn't know. I will axe that from the lexicon." And so, like, I left a comment for them, and then was like, "Hey, not sure if you're aware." And they were like, "Oh, thank you for letting me know." And like, that's what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a situation where, like, you tell someone, like, "Hey man, maybe you didn't know this is where that word came from," because a lot of our language comes from some bullshit. And so that's what it was supposed to be, and it morphed into this shit where, like, if people were not capitulating to the language demands, it was like, it was being made into a much bigger deal than I think reality ever actually made it. Right. Like, out in the real world, even living in an area where there are just so many trans people, it is so infrequently that anyone ever is like announcing their fucking pronouns in real life in my existence. It's just, it's the fuss about this shit just isn't real. You know what I mean? And like, normies don't care. And the people who do care, and the people who are really upset about like the fairness of college sports or whatever, it's like, okay, well, now there aren't trans women in college sports. Can you buy eggs yet? Can you afford a gallon of gas yet? How has this made your life better? You know? Yeah. So I will not pretend that Charlie Kirk was a saint. Charlie Kirk said that it was reasonable to have some deaths every year due to gun violence in order to maintain our other God-given rights, that was a reasonable and prudent deal. That is what he said. Well, he got to put his money where his mouth was, because he got to be one of those deaths this year. And they're absolutely doing the opposite of what he very clearly stated was what he thought the exchange was, is you're supposed to have the gun deaths in order to maintain the other rights. But they're using his death by gun to try to take our rights away. And I, as someone who absolutely fucking hated Charlie Kirk, am the person here going, do you think that's what he would have wanted? Honestly? Do you honestly think that Charlie Kirk would have appreciated being martyred and having that martyrdom be used to attack free speech? As someone who if he didn't have the opposition, he didn't have a job. If people couldn't say shit that he could argue against, they don't want a free-flowing exchange of ideas. He was dangerous to them. You know? And quite frankly, he was dangerous to everyone, right? If we're going to go down this line of speech being, inciting people to violence, I mean, certainly Charlie Kirk espoused hate constantly. There already have been multiple occasions of people threatening violence in the name of Charlie Kirk toward leftists. They don't care about hypocrisy. They don't I want you to have reasonably priced housing. I want you to have health care. I want you to have access to an education of your choosing. Those are my radical beliefs. I think that healthcare should be healthcare for everyone. I do not believe that we should be gatekeeping what procedures are and are not necessary. If your doctor, medical team, what have you, deems something necessary, you should get it. That's just how it should work. Regardless of if this is trans healthcare, if this is abortion as healthcare, if this is, fucking diabetes healthcare, addiction healthcare, weight loss or gain, or, hormone replacement for cis people. I'm sorry, gender affirming care is not just something for trans people. Cis people get gender affirming care all the fucking time. Every fucking cis person who has ever had hormone replacement therapy, that is gender affirming care. That's the whole fucking point, is so that your body continues to have the hormones that it requires to do the things that it's supposed to do in order for you to physically, be presenting to yourself and others as the gender that you align with, right? If when your ovaries decide they're done and you no longer have the hormones making the shit go, you start getting hairy and shit, and that's not what you want. You start taking that estrogen. As a dude, you start getting floppy in the arms and shit. You start taking that testosterone. Like, they want to also conflate the pedophilia of the Epstein of it all with being trans, with being queer. They want to act as if, it's that whole all sins are the same kind of a situation. Like, a sin is a sin is a sin, and, it's what allows people to write off, the assault of children, because in their mind that's not different than being gay. Two consenting adults to them is just as much of a sin as an adult assaulting a child. And that's a problem, right? And, the problem with that is, in large part, that if you then have people being openly queer in any kind of a way, right, that they then are confronted with the fact that people still are like, well, pedophilia is still bad. And so then when they get caught doing that shit, it's not seen as the same as just being gay, which is the thing that lots of people get caught doing all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's why the closeted people are accepted on the right, and it's why there are so many closeted people on the right. It's why, Grinder crashes every time there's a fucking Republican event, because the closeted conservatives are a useful tool to the pedocons. The because the perpetuation of the idea that being queer is something that should be hidden, that's something that you should be ashamed of, that, it's like this idea that these are all natural urges, but you should hide them because God says so. I'm sorry, bro, being a pedophile isn't a natural urge. Like, and if it is, get the fuck over it, because it's not good for the children, so leave them the fuck alone. Like, I don't care how natural it is for someone to think that they're attracted to children. Fuck off. That's not, no. Like, it doesn't matter, dude. I'm sorry, the science is in. Pedophilia is bad for children. Fucking surprise, right? So, it's all of this. It all comes back to the same shit. It's these people in power who want to maintain this facade that they are perfect, spotless human beings, that everyone loves them, while they do some of the most heinous shit that you could possibly do in the world. And, like, that's where we're at, is like, it's the same place that, like, honor killings come from. It's the same, it's this being wholly more concerned with what the outward appearance is than who someone really is. It fucks up everyone's life. And, the families take on this dynamic where it becomes this, like, it's often, there's a dude named Jerry Wise who does a bunch of videos about narcissistic parents that he talks about sick family systems. Um, and, this idea of like the image of the family needs to be perpetuated, and if someone doesn't fall in line with what the party line is, then they're breaking that image, and the, you get to be the scapegoat at that point. And please don't stop talking. I Several months back, and I've alluded to it before, I had like a religious awakening, and the sort of message that I received in that moment was that the only weapon that I really have in this life to protect myself and to try to ensure the survival of myself and my species as a whole is my word. It is my communication. It is my speech. And our Constitution is supposed to protect that. The very first amendment in the Bill of Rights, the very first right that is supposed to be our most important God-given right, is the freedom of speech. And Charlie Kirk, of all people, believed that. I should be able to say whatever unfavorable opinions I want, and so should everyone else. Use whatever words you want, use whatever language you want. I'm not going to start, like, I'm not opening up the fucking lexicon here, right? Like, I'm not suddenly going to be fucking Destiny and be arguing for why white people should be dropping N-bombs or some shit, right? Like, no. But I'm done arguing against other people saying shit. I don't care. Use whatever fucking language you want. I do not care anymore. I don't fucking care. I just want freedom of speech back, please. Thank you. So, yeah. If you've made it this far, I do appreciate. I end all of these things the same way. And it's because I mean it. I view all humans as an extension of myself, essentially, right? Like, we are all one species, all trying to survive. We are the collective fucking virus on this goddamn planet, just trying to survive without destroying the host. Um, and I think that we all kind of have our own purposes. Um, and we all have our own, talents and our own shortcomings. And if we all just kind of figure out who we are and what we're good at and what we're not good at and communicate those things to each other, we could live in a really bitchin' fucking society, man. We could, as human beings, come together, and like, the world could be a really awesome place if we started treating each other with empathy and, kindness. Um, but empathy and kindness only go so far. It's empathy first, not empathy always. You know? And when you show that you do not have empathy for me over and over and over again, my sense of empathy for you goes away. And it's not to say that it cannot return. I think that as long as you are alive, you are redeemable. So, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who fights for free speech, even free speech for people who disagree with you? Or do you want to be the person that jumps on the bandwagon of this administration and goes after people you don't like until they come for you? Yeah. Uh, these are the face-eating leopards, man, and they're gonna eat your face too. So, but I wish us all the best of luck. I love you. Be safe.